Hello again, my dear friends. You're watching the second video of our wonderful test drive, so to speak. And today's topic is, why are you still doing everything yourself, and why is that not okay? I'll talk about why you're still afraid to delegate certain processes, maybe afraid to hire more experienced employees, or perhaps you simply can't hire more experienced people. And we'll also talk about why it's important for the owner to actually be, well, a true owner. Not just in words, but because an owner really needs to be a manager. That is, an owner is a person, an entrepreneur who, well, even the root of the word entrepreneur in Russian comes from to undertake, who needs to take action, to be a kind of leader, to lead people, and people need to feel that. So why does it sometimes happen that an entrepreneur or manager can't do this? Because they don't know how. And this is picked up in general by absolutely all of your employees. Naturally, even the best, most responsible employee starts, yes, to mess up. Let me give you an example. The main example I'd like to give is when the owner, for instance, can't hire technicians. I'm just speaking hypothetically here. This is just an example. And then they quickly, hastily hire just any technician and agree to a 50% split, simply because a huge number of people say, that's just how everyone does it. So I can't not offer the same. But let's think about this. What if you explain to the person during the interview that they'll be earning more than the market average? I'm just speaking hypothetically here, just to make the point clear. If they're earning more than the market rate, what difference does it make whether they get 40, 30, or 20% if their actual salary is high anyway, right? That's one option, yes. But you get stuck, you put yourself on the same level as the people you want to hire, and you start talking to them in terms of percentages. And then you see they sense that you're afraid, that you're in a rather uncomfortable position right now, that you depend on them, and naturally they start pushing for their own interests. The same thing happens to you when your employees sense that you're short-staffed. They also start pushing for their own interests. And there's only one solution to all of this: when the owner truly knows, when the owner understands, and not in a bad way, but in a good way, manages all the facts, so to speak. What do I mean? What I mean is that when someone comes up to you and says, for example, that they don't have enough work, that they're underutilized and are even thinking about quitting, you immediately retreat into your shell, get scared, and they pick up on that. You start offering them something, God forbid, a higher percentage, a bonus, or something else. You start worrying, losing sleep at night, thinking about what to do, and you end up hiring those same questionable marketers. But in reality, it often happens that you haven't even looked at the CRM system, hopefully you have one, and you haven't noticed that this specialist has terrible client retention, that all the clients you work so hard to send to them never come back, that their average ticket is very low, and in general, they're always late, and so on. And then you end up talking to them in their own language. So for example, they tell you, I don't have enough work, and you, as a manager who doesn't really know what's going on, just say, okay, I'll try to do something about it. But if you talk to such people from the perspective of a knowledgeable owner, you'll sit down and, for example, let's say her name is Masha, and you'll say, Masha, look, after you told me that, I thought the best thing to do would be to open the CRM system and look at your results. The first thing I noticed is that your average check is extremely low. You're actually below everyone else. I'm just giving a hypothetical example here. Of course, things can be different in reality. And I also looked at your client retention, and it's just terrible. Basically, you have the same 10 or 15 clients coming to you all the time, and it's been like that for a while. The rest, the new clients I've given you, they don't come back. Masha, look, that means something's wrong. And here you see, the point is that Masha, of course, might say, but I do everything perfectly, and so on. I see. But now you're talking to her in a completely different way and dealing with entirely different issues. And believe me, I am convinced, of course, naturally, that all people want, well, I mean great employees, not just experienced ones, but truly great, responsible people and so on. They want to work at a really great company with safe, adequate management and to feel secure, yes. That is, to know that they really have a great workplace, everything is good and so on. And of course, they want to earn money. That's okay. Naturally, it's your responsibility to provide people with work. That is, they should work, ensure returns, deliver great work, be disciplined, arrive on time, keep their workspace clean and organized, and grow the client base through referrals, so to speak. So keep in mind that when they are satisfied, the clients are satisfied, they build you a great reputation and people come back to you. And what do we end up with? What happens is that you don't keep track of this. You don't have any system in place at all. I'm gradually leading up to this system now. That is, you don't have before-after chats, you don't track client retention, you don't even know how many new clients came in to which employees, and you haven't given the administrators any instructions on how to distribute them properly. Because that's also a very important point. For example, we don't assign every client to just anyone. We know exactly which client can be trusted to whom and who can't. If a client is problematic, for example, we don't assign them to that particular master. The administrator knows exactly that we only assign bloggers to top masters. I'm just giving you a general idea right now so you understand how clearly we have everything laid out, what, how, and when. And you see, even if a new administrator comes in, they have clear responsibilities and you could say a sort of roadmap for how they should behave. And when none of this is in place, the master realizes no one is supervising them, nothing, that's it. They just come in, work, and they feel like they're doing so much, and they genuinely believe that. He thinks that you actually owe him just because he comes to work, and on top of that, he's supposed to not be late. What's that all about? Seriously, what is this? Slavery or something? And you see, you can't even respond to that. In other words, you work with these kinds of people because psychologically, they're the only ones you can currently handle. So what does it mean to handle higher quality people? It means more responsibility, and that's what people are afraid of, you see? That's what they're afraid of. Not everyone wants to work with people where you'll have to take responsibility, where you'll have to work on marketing and so on. So my friends, if you're at this stage right now, although it's unlikely that people who signed up for the test drive are at this stage, but if you're at the point where you have no clients and so on, really none, and you're saying you don't have money for clients either. My friends, I honestly don't understand what people who don't have money for marketing are even doing in business. Let's just leave that aside, really. Let's not even get into it. But there's another case, yes, like the second side, the second group of people who come to me. These are people who, let's say, actually invest a lot in marketing and realize that there's no return. Very often you really have to dig into it. Sometimes the issue is with the database. People don't work with their database. My friends, how will you find out where your problems are if you don't work with your database? If you tell me now, and I hear this a lot, yes, we work with our database. I ask, how? They tell me, through mailings. Guys, sending out mailings is not working with your database. You can never work with your database through mailings. It's impossible. In other words, you can't get high quality, extensive, genuine, and, well, let's say real and honest feedback from a large number of people just through little messages. The only people who respond to these little messages are your most loyal clients, and even then only those who have the time, right? So again, if you don't have that kind of feedback, if you can't say to your employee, Masha, look, I've got 10 negative reviews about you in the last 2 weeks, then Masha herself will be sitting there thinking, damn, I'm in trouble, I need to improve, or maybe I should just quit. That's also an option. If she really doesn't want to do anything, then honestly, it's better if she leaves. So do you see how the role changes? We're talking about roles right now. The role, you see, when a manager is, obedient like that, they don't understand how to deal with it. Or there's another scenario when managers are also the masters. I've come across this. I had a girl in a one-on-one session and I asked, is there a rule? No. We started writing the rules and she had such a sad face. I said, what's wrong? She said, I just realized that the main thing I'm lacking is that the rules I want, I don't follow myself. See? So she says, I'm the master myself and sometimes I'm late to clients. I said, that's shameful. I said, that's not acceptable. If you're the master, you have to set an example for them no matter what. And if their own manager doesn't do it, then by what authority, so to speak, why should they do it? It's obvious that energetically, you're not their leader at all. You're just all talk. You keep telling us how things should be done, what's right, but you don't do it yourself. And it's the same thing when it comes to your employees. If you don't have a system, even if you just have 3 people working for you and you say, I'm not going to set anything up yet, I barely found these ones. And when there are 6 or 7 of them, what are you going to stand up and say, guys, now that there are 7 of us, I'm changing everything? That's just nonsense. Guys, that's impossible. Timing is everything. If you're too late, it's no longer needed. And you'll have a lot more problems when you finally launch everything and actually have to put out fires. And the worst part about putting out fires is that when things get really bad, it's very hard to recover. And when things are just starting to go wrong, or if you simply want to make something that's already pretty good even better, it's much easier to do and you can get results much faster. Very often we also start working with people whose situation isn't that bad and they always see results right away. But the main, most impressive result you see comes after a few months. Why? I always give an example, a real story that one of my mentors once told me. He says, for example, imagine there is a room and it's completely covered in ice. The whole room is encased in a thick layer of ice and they put a heater right in the middle of the room. And at first it seems like nothing is happening. Hours go by and it feels like nothing is changing at all. Absolutely nothing. So it's as if the heater was there or not. It made no difference. And then as soon as the temperature crosses 0, I'm telling you, I get goosebumps. Everything just melts. The same thing happens in business. I get goosebumps all over my head. You see what I mean? And the same thing happened to me. I started to notice even the smallest victories. They were very small, but I began to notice them because everything had been terrible before. I kept doing. The main thing was that I kept going, I kept going, I didn't stop. Even if something didn't work out, I kept going. And of course, a huge help was that I always had a mentor. So as soon as I started my journey, I always brought mentors on board because I understood, I had already experienced how much easier and faster it is with one when I can ask a question and they can answer me. Another major mistake is that very often people compare, for example, someone else's middle to their own beginning. This is a huge mistake that sets us back. Because in reality, we end up constantly fixating on someone else's success, someone who has already gone through a long journey, made a lot of mistakes, and faced many challenges. And for some reason, we only see their success, and we focus on something unclear instead of focusing on our own victories, even the small ones. And here's a very important point. I always recommend this to everyone. This applies to money, to everything, and to relationships as well. You need to play the long game. I love building wealth and helping others build wealth for the long term, not just right now, because you can achieve some quick result very fast. You could just win the lottery and then the day after tomorrow or in a month end up with nothing. Or you can build a great system that works consistently. And you see, now it's already easier for me, of course, than for many people who don't have a system. But there are a huge number of people whose turnover is higher than mine. But at the same time, they're in chaos and their profits are lower because turnover doesn't always mean net profit. I always measure success, not by turnover, but by net profit, because I've seen a huge number of cases where people had a turnover of over $1 million, but they earned less, sometimes nothing at all, compared to my guys, my students, whose turnover was 500,000, because they squeezed the absolute maximum out of their business because they knew how, because I explained it to them. And those others, you see, were just doing things blindly. Their turnover was on paper $1 million plus. That's a very wrong, in general, a very mistaken idea. And everything in our life is relative. You see, right now I'm sitting in a very large, spacious apartment, 100 square meters and so on, right? It's so sunny, so beautiful, I love it, but it's big and spacious. But if we compare this apartment to one that's 500 square meters, mine is 100, then it's not that big anymore. It's actually small. And it's the same thing. Someone makes $1 million. Okay, great. But someone else makes, say, 5 million. But that doesn't mean you should look at those who make 5 million and think you can't reach their level. You can be absolutely sure that from $1 million, you often squeeze out much more, especially after proper training, than people who make 5 million without learning, because measuring by turnover is not the right approach. You should focus more on net profit, and that can only be achieved through solid knowledge and understanding, which is also very important. And look, let's go back, work as if you're an employee in your own business, because you're basically doing everything yourself. Employees see that you're the admin and you're doing admin tasks. God forbid if you don't even have one. You're doing everything both as the admin and as the technician. And if your technicians need to redo something, you handle that too. And if something happens with the cleaning service, you take care of it as well. You're also doing the SMM and you're the one replying to direct messages. And it's even worse when you actually have all these people, but you still end up doing everything yourself. People see you not as a leader, but as someone just pretending to be busy, always occupied and tired. I always give my students this example. When you're exhausted and conducting interviews with no energy at all, completely worn out, imagine that some really motivated, awesome people somehow ended up at your interview, and what they see in front of them is a tired manager. Would you want to work for someone like that? That's why I always say, ask yourself this question. Would you work for yourself? Would you want to work in the system you currently have, if you even have one? Would you want to work in chaos? And when your employees are late and you say nothing, that's also a sign of disrespect towards you. People don't respect you or your business directly, and you just, to put it bluntly, swallow it and let it slide. Someone was late once, you said nothing. Someone was late a second time, you said nothing again. Then a third person comes along. Is this the person you want to build your system around? You tell him, listen, here everything is strict. You're not allowed to be late. And so he's sitting in the back room, listening to your employees laugh and say, poof, come on, we all show up here whenever we want, seriously. How are you going to build this system then? You won't be able to do it. Of course, none of this happens overnight. It's a gradual process. And why am I telling you all this about playing the long game? Don't think you can just change everything with the snap of your fingers. That's impossible. It's impossible to change everything in an instant. You can't change everything just because you've decided to. Yes, making a decision is a super important step. Making decisions is exactly what's crucial to do at the very beginning. Because if you don't make that decision, nothing will click in your mind and nothing will move forward. But as soon as you make the decision, you have to understand that we don't lose weight instantly, right? To lose weight for the long term and keep it off, you need to change your eating habits, not just for today, but for the long haul. You need to completely adjust your routine for the long term. You need to incorporate exercise into your daily routines. And this has to be for the long term. Otherwise, we'll lose weight quickly and just as quickly gain it back. The same thing happens in business. And why are you afraid to let go of control? Why do you want to control the director, the admins, the specialists, and everyone else? Because in reality, you just don't know any other way. If you don't check the direct messages, everything will fall apart. In fact, it's all very simple. You just need to delegate tasks properly. You just need to establish discipline. And you just need to explain what each person's responsibilities are. If a specialist comes in and earns money for you, that's a different matter. And we'll cover that in the third lesson. When I talk about how you should work, how you should hire, and of course that you are obligated to provide people with work because people come to you to work to earn their living. And you, as the owner, are the person who must provide your specialist or employee with work. And then it's their responsibility to do their job well in order to maintain your reputation, ensure clients return, and so on. In other words, business is a system where there is no single most important person. And of course, if you're just sitting there focusing on marketing and there's no money, or you don't know where to start, or you're wasting your budget hiring marketers and constantly replacing them because they're not delivering results and people are complaining, well, they have every right to do so, don't they? But as soon as you learn how to do effective marketing, as soon as new clients start coming in and you become that manager who really gets it, they don't realize that you actually understand everything. You're on top of client retention. You gave them 10 new clients and you're watching, why did only 2 out of 10 come back? He starts to approach things in a completely different way. Now he starts to worry about being late because you might get even more upset and he's on that edge. What if I get fired? I'm not such a great employee after all, you know? And none of this happens in a single day. It all happens step by step. It's just like in any relationship, you see? I always say that relationships are work too, business is work, and relationships with children are also work. Everything is work and it's impossible without it. And you know, when you're in the position of just a master, even if you're not a master, but a manager who sits and does everything for your employees, who begrudges spending money on training, who doesn't train them, well, that's important too. People want companies with great people where the leader is growing and they're ready to grow as well, and so on. In a company in chaos, I very often see job ads that say flexible schedule. Who are you attracting with such a terrible ad? When you write flexible schedule, you're basically attracting either slackers or a star who'll come in and say, look, I'll only work this way and I won't work any other way. What does a flexible schedule even mean? Do you understand? And from there as well, I'll talk about this in the tools section in the third lesson. So these are, specific clear points that just end up blurring everything. In other words, you're attracting the wrong people through a poorly written job ad, through bad marketing and a poor or wrong approach to marketing, which leads to hiring the wrong employees. Because you don't understand how to hire properly, right? When it comes to hiring itself, you also need to be precise to know exactly what to pay attention to. You need to monitor that as well. You monitor SMM strictly by the number of leads that come in and then how those leads are handled. Well, that's up to the administrators, whether they process them well or poorly. So everyone has their own area of responsibility. And when everyone comes to the meeting and sees that, well, it means everything is clear. The manager is aware of everything. He knows who is good at increasing the average check, who has great client retention. He knows what's happening in his business. He explains what we'll be working on, like now you'll be working with bloggers. Who are you collaborating with? You want to work in a company like that, you see? That's the kind of manager I'm talking about. Of course, a manager should have a lot of energy. They need to have strength. They should inspire others. People should look up to them, When people look at them, they say, I see the employees. I can really see it in their eyes. Whether they like me or not, it doesn't matter. Honestly and sincerely, I don't think they actually hate me. Definitely not. But I also don't expect them to love me. But I can see how interested they are in following my blog, how they watch it. And they see a manager who's sometimes on a podcast, sometimes at a training session, sometimes here, sometimes negotiating with bloggers, organizing brunches, attending brunches herself, handing out certificates, and they can really feel that in a tangible way. How could you not want to work with people like that? I mean, with a person like that, obviously they'll naturally be drawn to you themselves. And again, look, this is another important aspect. And all of this needs to be shown on your platforms. Yes, on social media, on Instagram, for example, because we never have just one client who pays us. We have 2 types of clients, those who come to us for services and those who come to work with us. And when people, specifically masters or administrators, see the buzz happening in your business, when they later see a job posting, they'll be eager to come work for you, because that's another funnel. A funnel isn't just for sales. In fact, it's a big mistake to only create sales-oriented content. And you see, as I'm explaining all this, you might be thinking, oh my God, there's so much to do. But no, all of this can be done easily. I spend at most 1 hour a day on management. And even then, for example, today I didn't spend any time on management at all. I had a photo shoot with SMM, so let's say that counts as time I spent on my business. I spend 3 hours a week managing my offline business. The rest of the time, it's not just that I'm enjoying myself, though I do, of course. I go for massages, meet up with friends, go on dates with my husband, and spend time with my kids. In a little while, I'm going to pick up my daughter from kindergarten. I could delegate this, but I don't want to. I actually enjoy doing it. You see what I mean? So what's the point? It's that I'm living my awesome life and I'm loving it. And yes, of course, sometimes things are tough. There are problems. Right now, I'm starting a new business. There are all sorts of challenges, but I know that's just part of the business process. I have enough energy to overcome all of this because I know it's worth it. There's money, resources, a future, and scale in it. But when I'm just sitting there completely burned out, nothing's working out, I don't know how, and I don't want to invest money in myself, I'm just sitting in this hole of mine, not understanding what to do. But at the same time, I don't want paid help, only some free stuff. Guys, seriously, where have you ever seen that? Where have you seen this? It's like going to a store and saying, give me clothes for free. I want to look good, I want to win $100 million, but I don't want to pay. Well, it just doesn't work that way. So my friends, everyone needs to be in their right place. And in conclusion to this video, I want to say the most important thing. You need to understand that there must always be, a leader must be above their people. I don't mean in terms of status, but they should look at everything differently. People, employees, need to understand that you know everything. And all the key points that they need to have in order, you are keeping them under control. And when you know the control points for any employee, it becomes very easy for you, because people know. How to control them? That's a separate question. In the third video, I'll talk about how to control administrators, how to control technicians. And really, it's not about standing by the cameras or sitting there, because very often people tell me, I'm in the studio all day anyway. That's actually a bad thing if you're in your studio all day. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed the second video. There's still a third one, and I'll be waiting for you in the third video. There, we'll talk about specific marketing and control tools, the things that either aren't being done or are being done incorrectly. And I think you'll find it super interesting.